Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Ghost in the Magazine. I'm Elle,
I'm Al.
and today we're covering The Haunting, which wasn't as good as I remembered it being.
It was definitely not my favorite adaptation of this. I don't think it really did the source material justice, but you
Mm-mm.
know, it is what it is.
For me, this movie is all vibes, like the stuff that I
Yeah.
like about it. The house, excellent. Just like the setting, beautiful. Um, Catherine Zeta Jones, aspirational, like just
Hmm.
looks gorgeous the whole time. I love her wardrobe. Um, just I don't know. I even don't mind the CGI in it, even though it is pretty dated.
No.
But the script, however,
Yes.
yikes.
And there was a very strong lack of chemistry between the cast too, because a lot of these you watch, like if you watch like Haunting of Hill House, they felt like a family. They felt like they
Hmm.
knew each other, and this one just kind of feels like, oh, this is Liam Neeson not killing somebody, which is weird, and then Catherine Zeta-Jones being hot and Owen Wilson being himself,
Yeah.
like in a really cool looking house with some
Yeah.
CGI.
Yeah. I watched this this came out in 99 and I watched this a lot, and I think this was one of like the first DVDs I owned when I because I would buy from when our video store went out of
Yep.
I bought a bunch of DVDs from them, and I think that one of them was this one because I had this DVD for a very long time. And I think that I think again I was focusing on the aesthetic, but also just like the way that the house attacks them is terrifying. I
Yeah.
I think I mentioned we just recorded Final Destination, which I think might actually run after this in the schedule, but I'm claustrophobic, and when that room starts attacking her and sinks down and like
Hmm.
traps her on the bed, hell no.
Yeah.
Hell no.
Yeah, it definitely did give the house its own, like, almost made its own character, which I really do appreciate when the settings feel like they're a part of it and they're like a living character. And the house is gorgeous. Like, I'm a big sucker for big fancy spiral staircases. So the
Yes.
big spiral staircase was like, ooh, this is aesthetically pleasing. But I felt like I could watch it with the sound off and still get the same experience.
100%. That is it
Like,
completely. It is so pretty. It's such a
yeah.
pretty movie. Even the jank CGI. Like,
Yeah, well, and like that's the thing too, is like if you look, I had to look it up because I'm like, man, Owen Wilson looks really young in this, but the
mm-hmm.
movie quality looks really good, and I didn't realize it was as old as it was because it looks really nice. Like the settings are great, the camera quality is pretty decent, the cast. Like if I wasn't such a big Owen Wilson fan and realized I was like, wow, he looks so young because Liam
Mm.
Neeson looked the same for. He's got that like Tom Cruise type of thing where he just looks exactly the same and he's
Yeah.
never gonna change. He's just always gonna look like Liam Neeson in Taken.
Mm-hmm.
Like no matter what you do. But yeah, it's like I wasn't getting much from because that was the thing is like I told you, whoever mixed the sound for this movie needed to be fired because I was making candles and so I had my exhaust fan on so I didn't like set my alarm off and I had this on and like had it cranked up because I couldn't hear them talking and then like the jump scare would happen and it
Yeah.
was just like blowing out my speakers and it's like okay we get you on us to pay attention to what's going on but you also need to like make everything 10 times louder
Yes.
than the whisper talking that's happening.
I really hate that in movies, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't notice it as much in this one, but I can see like if you're doing something else, if you were walking away. Unfortunately, this had most of my attention. I was playing a phone game. Well, I was watching it, but like nothing else like auditory. And I did have it cranked up, but I do remember like the banging in it being annoying. But also I just
Yeah.
felt like it sounded, I don't know, it didn't sound crisp either. Like the banging,
No.
it was like somebody hitting like a bad drum recording. Uh, one of my brother's bands did. It sounded like he was playing against cardboard. That's kind of the sound it had. It was
Yeah.
like very damp, is what it
It
was.
it was giving janky indie horror game jump scare bangs. It was kind of like we're trying to get your attention, but we don't really know how to get your attention and like how this thing is supposed to sound. Like anytime
Hmm.
they would open up like the fireplace door thing and the jangling of it, and the, like I'm like, this is like you don't need to like make it so obvious that they're struggling. We can see that they're
Hmm.
struggling to open the fireplace.
Well, and there's that hook thing. They must have seen it because eventually they're like trying to move it, but
Yeah.
like they fought against it for quite a while. I think the first time I tried to open it and I felt it catch, I would start looking for that instead of continuing to just brute force.
Yeah, for being as smart as Liam Neeson's character was supposed to be, he had one brain cell. The only person that had any semblance of like some sort of awareness of what was going on was Catherine Zeta Jones' character, and she was
Yes,
also like running on just a handful of brain cells.
true.
There was,
Is it Eleanor, the main woman?
yeah,
Is that her name? She was so fucking loopy. Like,
yes.
just seemed absolutely out of her head bonkers. I don't know how anybody dealt with her or took her seriously at all.
Even before she went to the house, she was
Mhm.
picking fights and everything was dramatic. She felt like she was like gonna Disney princess drape herself over furniture and just be like, oh, the humanity. Like she had that vibe. And like, you don't need to have this vibe. You're fine. You're okay.
The way that the story played out too, and like how dramatic she was, and to an extent,
Hmm.
Liam Neeson's character was pretty
Yeah.
dramatic too. I was just like kind of checked out, and I was kind of laughing at it by, especially when the statue, like the fountain statue, grabbed him and tried to drown him.
Yeah.
Um, I was kind of laughing at that point, and I was over it. I was like, "Oh shit! This movie did not pan out the way I remembered it."
No, no, and I have such a high standard because I love Haunting of Hill House. Like Mike
Mm.
Flanagan is one of my favorite directors. That has one of my favorite pieces of cinematography ever filmed in that series. And I loved Eleanor in that series because she was so like she was just so well written and she was so captivating. And then you look at this one and she's just kind of like a lobotomized woman in a nightgown. It's just kind of like I
Yes,
don't the children. It's like
the
when did children
children.
happen? Like where did the children came from? They're just like oh, and there's just okay. She's like we're seeing the children. I have to go to the children. Okay, go to the children. I guess.
Yes, the
Yeah,
children, like the corny story
yeah,
was a little bit too much too. I feel like it was of its time though, in a
yes.
lot of respects, because I feel like I watched a handful of other movies that were about as corny from this time period.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, I thought this was by the same group that did 13 Ghosts because it had that
Mhm.
same big elaborate house and it kind of had the same similar casting style because you have like Matthew Lillard, who was kind of your Owen Wilson in that movie, and the guy who played Monk was a little bit more like Liam Neeson. And so you kind of
Mhm.
had like similarities with those sorts of things. And I think that company did a Haunting of Hill House movie themselves. So the people who did 13 Ghosts also did
Yeah.
this around the same time, and then you had Ghost Ship, and so it's kind of in that vein of like the early 2000s CGI is getting big, looking like a PS2 video game, haunted house movies.
Yes. I think you're
So
talking about House on Haunted Hill.
House on Haunted Hill, yeah,
And we covered that in another episode. Also, one of the movies of my childhood that wasn't
yeah,
quite the way I remembered it, but it wasn't as bad as this one. I have to give it to them because this one was done by Dreamworks, and I think that's
hmm
why we got the really good like visuals and the aesthetic. Like
yeah.
it was pretty state of the
The
art.
budget was there, yeah,
Yeah. But and the CGI on the House in Haunted Hill was not its strong point at all. At all. But
no,
they had the House on Haunted Hill, like putting it in that old asylum, is exploitative as asylum horror is, in my opinion. It was scary. It was like a
yeah,
captivating story in the way it unrolled, and I also loved the interplay between the husband and wife that hated each other. So I don't know. Better I would say if I was ranking them, that would definitely go over this one.
Yeah, this one definitely, again, I feel like it was miscast and the script needed some help. And it's like the script needed a lot of help to make it, because it's like there was, again, you had all the elements there and other people have adapted this with the same source material and the
Mhm.
same characters and done it like leagues above this one. And I think this one was just kind of like in that, like, ooh, we have a big budget to play with, let's make a spooky house movie,
Yeah.
because the house definitely is the shining piece of this whole film. The house is gorgeous. The architecture is gorgeous. Even the like you walk in that big like open like living space that they just wander in. Like nobody needs an entryway that is that large with a staircase that large.
Yeah.
But it looks great. It's appealing. But yeah, it was definitely, I was zoning out a lot. And it was one of those that like I couldn't leave. So because I was making candles, so I was stuck over my stove and my laptop was right here. So like I was visually watching it and I was still getting checked out at points. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't. Owen Wilson screaming again. Okay. He's like, and she's being dramatic and curtains
Yeah.
are moving and
Yeah, the story
yeah,
just wasn't there and the dialogue was awful and
yeah,
it just fell flat. But it was pretty. Again,
yeah,
just watch it on mute. I think that's it. Watch for aesthetic right in the background, you know? Other
yeah,
than that, the house and Catherine Zeta Jones wardrobe did all the heavy lifting here.
yeah, yeah. She was a weird character. She
She
was
was.
very strange. She like I couldn't tell if she was trying to be like big sister or if she would like really wanted to sleep with Eleanor. Or like I couldn't tell what I was
I
like, are we
felt like
having
she was
another,
wanting to sleep with her, but that's that was
yeah,
my read on it.
I was like, is this another like weird, sad, gothic sapphic story that I'm not catching on to? Like
Maybe they wanted
yeah, it
people to
was
write fanfic.
maybe I don't know.
Unfortunately, it's just like Avery said when she came on for the Supernatural episode. She's like, there has to be something there that makes you want to write it, but it can't be
Yeah.
done well enough. So it just the problem is there's not enough there, I think, to motivate anyone to have like for this to have like a fandom. So
Yeah. Yeah. Especially not when you have adaptations that are big enough to actually have the fandoms that
yeah,
will do it justice the way that it should be done, in my
yeah.
opinion. But yeah, it was definitely a movie. It was interesting.
I think like when we look at what we rated the last one, I guess this one's gonna be like 2 to 1.5 to 2 chuds for me, probably
Yeah.
closer to 1.5 actually. And it sucks because
Yeah.
I feel like I've given worse movies higher scores, but I can't give it much more just because it's so dumb.
Because that's the thing. Is like with like Final Destination, it was bad and it was stupid, but I was having fun. Like I
Mhm.
was giggling and I was like so invested in like the characters, even as much as I hated most of them. But this one, I'm just kind of like, oh, it had the same problem with Ocean's 11. I'm very much one of those people that I like actors who I forget who they are when they're in the film. Like that's one of the reasons I love Chris Pine is because no matter what you put him in, I forget that he's Chris Pine. But then if you're watching Chris Pratt, he's always Chris Pratt.
Yes.
And I have that issue with I think some of these things that in my brain I'm like I can't disconnect the fact that this is Owen Wilson and Liam Neeson in a spooky house movie with half naked Catherine Zeta Jones, and I feel like it was just not enough for me to forget that I was watching a movie, and
Mm.
that I was like trying to like I'm like, oh, this is just, I could be watching another Owen Wilson movie that I could be watching the new Disney's Haunted Mansion where Owen Wilson kills it in that movie, and it's very similar. It's almost identical to this movie, but he was phenomenal in that, and I'm just like, it just felt like I don't know. It's just one of those like Ocean's 11. I think let's put as many big name people in as we can and make it look really cool and flashy, and then not put any time in the script because we have Liam Neeson and it's on the verge of the Star Wars hype when he was playing Qui-Gon, and
Oh
we've got
yeah.
like that sort of thing. It is, and it's just I was just not engaged like I wanna do it. I love haunted house movies. Like, I love,
Same.
like, even, like 13 Ghosts, like, I know it's Matthew Lillard. I can't forget the fact that that's Matthew Lillard, but I'm having a blast watching this movie, and this one's just kind of like, yeah, it's okay. It's
Mm.
fine."
It's aight, yeah.
Yeah. It felt long. I don't know how long it actually was, but it felt long.
I was so checked out.
Yeah, I was too. I kept looking over like, "Is oh, they're still going?" Oh,
It's only
what it has
114. That's a more
that's about 2 hours.
it's
Yeah.
about 2 hours, yeah. It's
Yeah,
like, it's
it
not
felt
quite
a
2
lot longer.
hours, but
I think it was a nice way to pass the time.
apparently they shot this at 2 different places in England and then some at specially crafted set. They do a pretty good job of making it seem like it's one place. I
Yeah,
never caught on to the 2 places, plus extra, which I'm guessing the extra set was probably, like, the room that came alive and tried to eat them.
and probably, like, the collapsing staircase. I'm sure that was
Mhm.
probably a built set because then that way they could, like, rig it up to the way that they need to without actually damaging any
Yeah,
architecture kind of thing.
it's aight. That's
Yeah, it's fine. It's an early 2000s haunted house movie that it exists.
it exists, yeah. I feel like they just spent like the budget on the cast and the set, and they
And
really should
yeah,
have
that's it.
invested just a little bit more into the script. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you can find this podcast on the interwebs at ghostinthemagazine.site, or you can find us on Twitter at GITM Podcast. You can find me at Nocturnical.
And you can find me at Maybe Mockingbird.
Okay, bye.